Yeah. Scott, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'd say I'm a sports nutritionist by trade. I've got a master's in sports nutrition, but it didn't start out that way. I used to work in IT, and Food for Fitness, which is my business, was a blog. It was a place I just posted workouts and recipes and what I was doing at the gym, and then that evolved to going back to uni, having people helping me out. Did a couple of men's fitness magazines back in the day, which was, you can see what it's like to be professionally photoshopped. And yeah, have a podcast, and we're chatting about some of the themes in the book, which came out be about 4 weeks ago now. It's done pretty well. It went to number 10 in all books on Amazon on the day it came out. It's got more 5-star reviews than Joe Wicks and Tom Kerridge combined. That's my current favourite line. But yeah, it's all covering the standards of approach I take to nutrition, which is to try and make it as easy as possible for people, because I think it's very confusing about what you should actually do in order to lose weight, and what is healthy foods, what should you be eating, how should you be exercising, should you go on a keto diet, should you have BCAAs, should you train fasted. It's very confusing because there's a lot of nonsense out there on social media. People who are shredded, that have got a large following and a blue tick, sort of given a badge of authority, and they just post garbage, and it's very confusing. So the purpose of tonight, hopefully, is to just give you some clarity and answer as many questions as we can. No such thing as a stupid question. And yeah, we'll just, like you said, we've got some predefined ones that you sent in already, but then once we get going, there's we'll just help you out as much as I can.
Yeah, so do you want to batter through some of these?
On you go.
Yeah. So what got you interested in nutrition, and to give a summary of your personal journey, because someone knew you at school and nutrition wasn't part of your plan then?
I think I've got an answer to that one. Why nutrition? I suppose I was more interested in the nutrition side of things because I felt it could have the greater impact on body composition. If you look at the research, it does seem to have a greater effect compared to exercise on its own, or when you combine them, it works even better. And I was always into cooking and recipes and that kind of thing. So going down more the nutrition side of things, as opposed to doing what Mike's done and open a gym, just seemed to be the logical thing for me. And Thor agrees.
Scott, you frequently mention on your podcast that you used to believe in all fitness and nutrition myths that are out there. What was the turning point for you, and what has moved you to the sensible approach you have now?
Oh, the turning point, I think it started around 2012. I can't remember a specific moment, but I've talked about this in the past, and I don't mind putting my hands up saying I've fallen victim to all the nonsense. I've tried everything. I've done paleo. Mike put his head in his hands and remember some of the conversations we had about, why you shouldn't eat honey because it spikes your insulin. And we had no idea what insulin was or what spiking it meant, but we read this in a book, so we're like, oh yeah, it spikes insulin, so honey's bad and go paleo. So I've done all that, and I remember as well, I went to a bodybuilding expo and spoke to a guy who was huge and shredded, and I said, what's a good fat burning tip? Fasted cardio with a green tea in the morning. So what did I do? Green tea, fasted cardio, couldn't be too high intensity, so I used to walk around the pitches at Aberdeen Uni before work, just having had a green tea, because this guy who was ripped said it was a good thing to do. So I've done all that, and now I'm in a position where I can look back, and I don't deny that I've done this, because you see some people in fitness try and brush over silly things they've said in the past, but what changed? I don't know. I don't know what the exact moment was, but the thing that I've learned from it, and I always try and tell people, is be critical and ask why. So if you think that Diet Coke is bad for you, why do you think that? Not just because, everybody knows that, or my pal at the gym said. You want to try and just go a little bit deeper to try and understand why you're doing something, and make sure there's actual reason for it. Like, should you eat 6 meals a day because it boosts metabolism? No, you shouldn't, because again, if you look at the actual science and what's been proven, it doesn't matter how often you eat. So it's just be more critical, and I wish somebody told me that when I started out, to just question things that you assume are common sense, or question things you just assume to be true, because often, especially with fitness and nutrition, they're not.
What are some of your favourite myths then?
How long have you got? Right. Favourite myths?
Have you got any myths?
Okay. Right. I'll just tell you things you don't need to do. So you don't need to eat every 2 hours to boost your metabolism. Like I said, it doesn't matter how often you eat. You can eat large meals less frequently or smaller meals more frequently. Makes no difference. Total calories at the end of the day. Carbs after 6 don't become more fattening. If you skip breakfast, your next meal doesn't automatically be stored as fat. If you don't eat enough calories, you do not go into starvation mode. That's not an actual thing. You don't need a protein shake instantly after a workout. You've got hours, up to about 24 hours after training, when you can have protein for it to have an effect. What else? You don't need BCAAs if you're consuming enough protein. You don't need to exercise on an empty stomach. You can train at any time of the day. You look at the research, it doesn't matter. You burn 300 calories in cardio on an empty stomach in the morning versus 300 at the end of the day. It's exactly the same. So yeah, there's a lot of myths out there.
Say you don't need BCAAs if you're eating enough protein. How much protein should you be eating each day, depending on the objective?
Well, that's the thing, depending on the objective.
Yeah.
So it seems to be around about 2 grams per kilo of body weight. For people who are exercising, that's normally where you start. As you get leaner, as you sort of lose more body fat, that protein intake increases. Now, the reason why it increases is because protein is muscle sparing, and when you are trying to lose body fat, you also lose muscle in the process. Even if you're on a very, very controlled intake and you're doing everything right, you will still lose muscle. So protein is muscle sparing. So that's why when someone is lean, like if you look at someone who is maybe trying to get down super lean, like photo shoot lean, bodybuilding lean, the recommendations are upwards around about 3 grams per kilo of body weight. But for most people, it's around about 2. For people trying to build muscle, they think more protein equals more muscle mass. Again, that's not actually true. Around about 2 grams, if not slightly less. People not interested in losing body fat, just maintaining weight, again, it's even lower, maybe around 1.5, 1.8 grams per kilo. But yeah, usually this 2 grams per kilo is what we're aiming for.
And is all protein good, or is there such a thing as bad protein, good protein?
When you're anytime you're picking food, you want to just look at the quality of it and use kind of common sense about it. Like, will it go out of date fairly soon? Is it fresh? Is it sustainably sourced? Is it convenient? Do I actually like it? I think that question is more geared to like comparing a chicken breast versus a protein shake. Yeah. It might be. So protein in having it as a shake, it's actually a very high. You grade protein and there's different scores. One of them is called biological value, BV, and whey protein, which is the most common type of protein in shakes, has a very high biological value. It's actually a very good source of protein. It's convenient and you can mix it into smoothies and oats and all that kind of thing. So people think, oh, it's highly processed, it must be bad for you. There's kind of a flaw in that approach. Something being processed doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. But whole foods, because of the digestion involved, it take longer to break down. So they're more likely to keep you feeling fuller for longer. So generally, I'd suggest people get most of their protein from whole foods. Again, if you look at the quality of protein, animal-derived protein has more what we call complete amino acids in it. So it's generally, again, a higher quality protein compared to plant-derived, but it doesn't mean you can't consume enough protein just eating plant-based foods. It's harder to do. You need to be more creative, but you certainly can do it. But yeah, talking about quality protein, and I think that kind of answer. I wouldn't say good and bad. It's a scale, and it depends on what you're trying to do.
So speaking about the plant-based protein there, have you got top tips for vegetarian protein that's easy to source and cook?
Yeah, so anytime you have a restricted intake on what you're eating, whether it's vegetarian or vegan, or you're a fussy eater, or you eat, you restrict foods for religious beliefs, whatever. When you are eating less types of food, you need to make sure the foods you are eating, you're getting as wide a range as possible. So if you're vegetarian, you probably eat the same kind of beans and the same kind of pulses most week. So the thing would be to just mix it up, get as many different types of beans, as many different pulses, and fruits and veg and everything that you possibly can. The classics are, again, if you're vegetarian, you can have dairy and eggs and so on. Vegan is slightly harder, but variety really is the key. And yeah, beans, pulses, tofu possibly. A scoop of whey protein again could be helpful. So when we talk about this good and bad protein, protein powder for vegetarians or vegans is again going to be helpful and probably more useful compared to someone who eats meat in their diet. In terms of plant-based protein for vegans, brown rice protein and pea protein and soy protein are generally the highest. Soy protein would have the highest biological value out of the three of them. So soy would be the best for vegan. But yeah, hopefully that.
And these are quite accessible to get hold of now.
Yeah. All your protein companies do whey, brown rice, all the different kinds, all the proteins.
So getting a good variety, depending on what you're doing, weights or cardio, do you change nutrition?
Say the question again?
So if you're doing a weight day or a cardio day, do you change the nutrition for the day?
Probably not. No, it depends again. Well, okay, context. Weights or cardio, if you're doing a lot of cardio, if we're talking like cardio like over an hour of endurance, then yeah, you're going to change your diet because you just need more carbohydrate on it. So if you're doing a lot of cardio, you probably want to have more carbs in those days. You may want to change your diet more between general activity days and rest days. Some people cycle their calories if they are tracking, and we'd have a lower intake on rest days, higher intake on training days, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. So long as you're still the standard rules of make sure you get enough protein, make sure you're getting enough calories, varied foods, plenty of fruit and veg.
So it leads me to macros being part of creating a calorie deficit. Do they matter, and how do you calculate them?
So macros, for anybody who doesn't know, is short for macronutrients. Generally, when we're talking about macros, we're talking about protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And when whoever asked this question is thinking about using MyFitnessPal to maybe track their macros, meaning they would have a protein, carbs, and fat target, an overall calories target, and they can pick the foods to hit their targets. I used to like people, would give them a calorie target, a protein, a carbs, and a fat target. But now I'm stripping out the detail really, and rather than saying track everything, track your calories, track your overall protein, and just let carbs and fat play around with themselves. So some days you can have higher carbs, higher fat, it doesn't matter, so long as your calories are the same and so long as protein's staying consistent. When you do that approach, tracking macros becomes way easier because, well, you're tracking calories and you're tracking one macro rather than three. And it just gives you more flexibility. Like if you want to have a load of oily fish one day, it doesn't matter. Yeah, take your fat, but you drop your carbs down. How do you calculate them? Go into Google, type in macros calculator, calories calculator. There's heaps of them, and they all roughly run off the same kind of formula, so the answer's about the same.
We've got one on our members portal.
Yeah, it's one of the members portal. Yeah.
If you haven't logged on yet. I've got a question here. I believe we need to get more fibre into us. Any tips on how to do this?
So green veg is high in fibre. Berries are a really good source. So strawberries and raspberries are loaded in fibre, and they're pretty tasty as well. So that's whole grain carbohydrates too. So make sure you're having brown bread, brown wraps. I won't say brown pasta and brown rice because they aren't as fine, so being realistic, we'll put them to one side. Unless you're making jambalaya, then you need brown rice for it. But yeah, berries are really easy. Dates, dried fruits are usually quite good and high in fibre, but yeah, veg, fruit, make sure you keep the peel on it. Yeah. It's a simple one.
Great. What's your quick fix go-to meal when you just can't be bothered?
I can't be bothered. Right, apologies. Costco do these bags. I call it DIY Costco KFC chicken, and it's like breaded chicken fillets that just taste like KFC. Oh, and they are, it's like 600 calories for 4 of them or something.
Yeah, rush to Costco.
It's terrible, but they are amazing.
That's your go-to.
I have a bag in the freezer. If I really can't be arsed cooking, I'll just throw a couple of them in the oven and have it with salad or something.
Yeah. So you still get your fibre in there?
Still get a fibre in, yeah. Or a whole grain wrap.
A whole grain wrap.
I make a zinger.
Oh, I love wrap. Anything in a wrap, that's me. Anything in a wrap.
Folk will be on Just Eat getting a KFC delivered just now.
So good foods to prevent an energy slump mid-afternoon, or things to avoid?
This question comes up quite a lot, and it's quite a hard one to answer because it depends on what somebody's eating the rest of the day. If the question is to try and address the mid-afternoon energy slump, looking at what you're having for breakfast, lunch, is probably a good idea, because our standard lunches are usually low in protein and low in fibre. So if you increase your protein and increase your fibre, both these together help you feel fuller, which is going to be helpful mid-afternoon. If you are also coming here after work, training 5, 6 o'clock or whatever, you probably want to think about having more of a meal 2 to 3 hours before coming here, rather than just grabbing a banana in the car or having a handful of nuts or something, because you think, oh, hang on, I don't want to eat, because if weight loss is the goal, you think, I don't want to have more calories, because what's the point? Then there's no point in me going to the gym and burn them off. It's just the same. But if you have a reasonable meal beforehand, you're going to have more energy to train at a higher intensity when you get to the gym anyway. So the result will often be you end up burning more net calories compared to had you not eaten and trained, like you're really tired and can't be bothered. So that's usually one thing to think about. I wouldn't say there's a specific type of food, like, oh, you've got to have goji berries or blueberries. Then we start going down this pseudo-scientific superfood.
Almost myths again. Yeah,
almost myths. So think about your lunch. Are you getting enough protein and fibre? Maybe put an actual meal in mid-afternoon, especially if you're going to train. Also, if you're not going to train, maybe put a little meal in anyway, so that when you go home, you're not absolutely starving and you're just like, all right, hang
First
on,
thing in the cupboard.
Yeah, cheese and crackers while I'm making my dinner.
So going back to the getting a meal before training, best post-workout meals?
It's good. Depend on the type of training you're doing. But yeah, some kind of carbohydrate is the main thing. If you get some protein in beforehand as well, that also will continue to be digested as you train and will carry into the recovery period. So again, it reduces the urgency for having protein immediately after exercise if you've had some protein before. But having some kind of carbs is going to be the main thing, whether it's weight training or especially if you're going for a run or doing some kind of endurance. You may want to think about caffeine if, again, you find you're kind of slumping in energy a little bit, or you're on a reduced calorie intake anyway. Some kind of caffeine about 30 to 60 minutes before exercise. A strong coffee is perfect there. You don't need to have one of these pre-workouts. Post-workout, it's very similar, but probably a little bit more protein, about 20 to 40 grams, which is equivalent to like a chicken breast, piece of fish, a bit of steak, 100 to 150 grams of mince, and again some carbs. So again, the idea of just a balanced meal, probably before and after as well.
After. Right, Scott, I'm going to give you a nice light-hard question before I ask you a tough one. What is your poison of choice when it comes to a less nutritious treat? Give us your top 5.
I thought poison was just referring to a drink.
Wow, give us your drinks as well.
Top 5.
You can do this all day. I can start asking questions now. And peanut butter. Do you like peanut butter?
I do like peanut butter.
Crunchy or smooth?
Yeah, crunchy actually.
Sorry, you can stay. You can stay. You can stay.
Top 5 drinks, like not Iron Brew. And yeah, that's just for a bit of Instagram banter. But no, I do like Iron Brew. Alcoholic. This is the danger because I pretty much take anything.
Yeah, whatever's in your hand.
A beer, glass of wine. I'm really into my wine. I've actually done like a wine tasting course and stuff, so I'm a bit of an arse when it comes to wine.
Is that why you got STV to get the wine rack in the back?
Yeah, no, it's really depleted. It needs topped up.
Topped up.
Yeah, anything apart from vodka.
Apart from vodka.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Just bad hangovers, bad memories.
It just tastes. No, it
just tastes like nothing.
Food wise, I don't have. I struggle to beat a really good steak. That if I go out for dinner and it's a good place, I'll probably have a steak.
Where's the best place in Aberdeen to have a steak?
Wow, I don't know in Aberdeen anymore, mate. I don't live here.
Yeah. Where's the best place you had a steak?
The best place I've ever had a steak? Well, in Aberdeen, there used to be a restaurant called the Stage Door. I'm just down from Golden Square. And I was genuinely gutted when they closed down because they used to do an amazing steak and the wine was good. But Miller and Carter's meant to be pretty good. I've not been there. Yeah, come on, hens. Yeah.
Miller and Carter's good.
Yeah, we'll go there.
Right. So
we would have gone there with Mike, but he's ill after this. So.
Yeah. Do you have any knowledge or tips of how best to cope with challenging hormones? I suffer with PCOS and premenopausal. I've been researching and found mixed reviews to benefits of weights and cardio.
Fortunately, last week I recorded a podcast on 3 subjects, 2 of which were PCOS and the menopause. The third one was training and nutrition on the menstrual cycle. So those subjects, if they are relevant to whoever asked this, just go and search for the Food for Fitness podcast, and not the most recent episode, but the one before. And there's a lady called Dr. Catherine Hood who comes on and answers that question far more eloquently than I could, and with more authority because she's a doctor.
I couldn't even ask it. It was a long question.
Well, good job. It's an acronym, and they didn't put the whole thing in.
Oh, I know. Do you have any opinion or thoughts on gut bacteria and its effect on diet and well-being?
Yeah, have I got an opinion on it? Yes. So yeah, I do. There is a lot of research being done into the gut microbiome and how it affects loads of things, and we're finding out it's tied into things you wouldn't even think your gut's associated with. The research is fairly new and it's emerging at the moment. So when you see people make huge claims about something being hugely beneficial for your gut bacteria or being very bad for your gut bacteria, again, you have to be critical of that claim and think, well, how bad, how good is it? Things like, when we talk about the gut, most people think, right, should I take a probiotic? That's usually a follow-on question from this. Now, probiotics, if you are taking them, you have to have a reason for taking them, not just good gut in general. Normally the reasons for taking a probiotic could be if you're going abroad, it can help with dodgy stomach. If you're going to Mexico or India or anywhere where there's more chance of you getting foodborne stomach upsets. If you've got IBS, is another reason to take probiotics. But you want to find out the type of probiotic that is best suited for whatever condition you're trying to help it with. Yeah. If you're just taking like a Yakult or one of these yogurts, it's like a shotgun approach. It's just like, hopefully something from there will help me.
Stick to it.
Yeah, rather than saying, right, what's the actual probiotic strand that I need? So, yeah, gut bacteria, we don't know a lot about it. I don't know a lot about it, but it seems to be more things coming out about it, and it's something, definitely to pay attention to.
Great. Top 3 daily habits that help just keep you on track with everything.
Do the worst thing first. It sounds like a mid-sentence. Do the worst thing first. I talked about it in the book actually, but it's not my concept. It's a guy called Brian Tracy, and I think it was you that put me onto it. Eat that frog.
I don't think I put it onto it because I just listened to the book last week, and I was like, you've been talking about that for.
Oh, I always thought you told me. That doesn't matter. Anyway, eat that frog. For anybody, so it's this concept that if you had to eat a frog, you would probably eat it all in one go at the beginning of the day. So you're not going, oh no, I've still got to eat that frog, I've still got to eat that frog. And you wouldn't cut it up into bits because you're like, every time you still have to eat a bit of a frog. So concept is eat that frog, get the worst thing done at the start. So I do that like the start of my day. If I'm looking at my diary, what am I not looking forward to, get it over and done with? Or if I know it's coming up in the week, I'll do the worst thing on a Monday, and then you taper it down at the end of the week. I'm a big, I don't know, habits. I write a lot of lists, and I try and have fun as much as possible and
enjoy
move
it.
And enjoy every cloud and all that kind of thing. I'm definitely an optimist. I wish I had some sort of deep, meaningful quote that I could give you, like
Stoic
such
quote
and such once said, but yeah, I don't.
I think the crowd's got some questions. We'll open it up in a minute. I've got a question for you, and I'm going to flip it back on you. You've asked this a lot. What's one thing you know now that you wish you did at the start?
Yes, that's a podcast question that everybody gets. I've been asked it before, so I feel like I'm a bit of a cop-out giving you the answer. And I've already answered this.
I know, you said it earlier. I was like,
it's be more critical. That's the one thing I wish I knew when I started out is question more things and
start with why.
Start with why, and also don't be afraid to say you don't know.
Yeah.
So like that PCOS question, I don't really know the answer, but somebody does. So I said, well, I'll just go and speak to them. And I think, especially in fitness, and when people are starting out, they don't want to say they don't know because they think it makes them look stupid.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. You generally will get more respect if you say to someone, I don't know, rather than trying to waffle some BS answer to them that's clearly made up on the spot. I don't know if that will transcend into your life. Maybe it does. Maybe that is my take home is don't be afraid to say no. And another one no is worth 20 maybes, right? So if you're like, definitely don't want to do something and your pal's like, oh, do you want to go out for a drink? You're like, yeah, maybe, I'll come back to you. Or, oh, yeah, I might do. Yeah, hang on, wait, let me check with the missus. And you come out, when you know the answer is no. If I just said no straight away, you can enjoy the rest of the day.
Absolutely.
So yeah, one no is worth 20 maybes. Say no more often.
I think we've got some questions, do we? Hands up, who's got questions? Right.
From people that are not here.
Okay then, right, go on then, Lindsay.
So this is from Barry, and she was asking, what would be the best time to eat before taking part in a half marathon? I was going to ask that as well.
Good question.
Same question.
Best time to eat?
Best time before to get the best out of the fuel.
2 days before. Start thinking about this 2 days before.
2 days before.
So what are you building up for marathon? So your runs are like 2 hours plus, just your training runs. How would your nutrition change?
As you start increasing your duration, you're probably going to just be increasing your carbohydrate intake because you just need that fuel there. In answer to that question specifically is what to eat before a race. Your race day nutrition should start, for something like a half marathon upwards, should start 2 days before because you want to do a carb load. Carb loading, you probably don't need it for a 10K or anything that's like around the hour mark. But anything longer than that, half marathon, ultra, an etap cycle, you want to do a carb load. There's a lot of research on it. So your carb load and the amount of carbs you have to eat is way more than anyone thinks. You're looking for around 8 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight per day.
I might
so
sign
for
up.
somebody who's 80 kilos, you're on about 800 grams of carbs. Friday and Saturday if your race is on the Sunday. It's way more. So when people talk about a carb load as in, oh yeah, I'll eat a bowl of pasta, you are just scratching the surface. Yeah. So your 2 days out can be carbs from any source, it doesn't matter. Brown rice, sweet potato, muesli, who cares? The day before the event, it's low fiber carbohydrates because that's going to impact your digestion, especially when you're eating that amount of carbohydrates. Yeah. So your low fiber carbs, and the level of detail you go down to with this is crazy. So it's, you remove the peel from fruit because that's excess fiber in it. You'd have white bread, white rice, white pasta, Frosties, honey on everything, jam, sorbet, fruit juice. It's mad. Haribo, it sounds fun. You're like, oh my god, this is amazing. But when you actually have to do it, it's horrible because it's just is so sweet. But the difference it makes is unbelievable.
But you wouldn't do that for a 2-hour training run.
No, that's for an event. That's for an event.
For a 2-hour training run, what would you still carb load the same way?
No. No, just for the event. For a 2-hour training run, you just want to have a decent carb meal 2 to 3 hours beforehand. If you are training early the next morning, make sure it's a big evening meal, maybe a pre-bed snack, and possibly in the morning, if you can, maybe a smoothie, just so you can get some carbs in that way.
And what are you doing on the day of the event? Take electrolytes?
Day of the event, again, it's going to be low fiber carbs. A breakfast I used to write into folks' plans if they were doing this kind of thing would be pancakes, because even if you're going abroad to do a marathon or a race, you can probably get pancakes somewhere. Low fiber, very tasty, easy to digest. You can put a lot of honey on. And also, if you're a bit nervous, you kind of want something comfort foodish to help you relax, which pancakes seem to do for people. And yeah, if say you've got a race in the morning, you'd want to get up early, get that meal in, and then maybe sip on like a sports drink and so on, just leading up to it. But if you've done a proper carb load the 2 days and the 1 day before, it's less important the day of, but still important.
Yeah. Is there other questions?
This is from Kelly. She's the captain of Aberdeen, and they're struggling a bit with what to eat the night before a game and what to have in the morning. Is it going to be quite similar to?
Yeah, very similar to that. Not necessarily too worried about low fiber the day before, because you're not having it the whole day, it's just the day before. So yeah, decent plate of rice, pasta, sweet potato, and then the day of. So again, when I used to work with footballers, we'd have the same kind of thing, a lowish fiber breakfast, probably a mid-morning snack, and very early lunch, and then maybe a little carb snack before. But again, it depends on your position. A goalie doesn't need to do this. But yeah, the idea is just familiar carbs. Not like people often have eggs on toast the morning of, which I'm not a huge fan on, because the fiber and the lot of fiber in the toast, and the eggs, the fattiness also slows down digestion, can come up on you as well. So yeah.
If your game was kicking off at 2 o'clock, for instance, like you get up at 8:30, 9
Yeah.
o'clock. Going to give me some suggestions of what you would have or suggest.
Breakfast, yeah, probably go for some kind of cereal, maybe some toast, maybe white toast. It also depends on the level you're playing at and how you digest food, and if you are nervous. And some people need hours before they play because they're nervous. Others you can eat about an hour before. It depends, but yeah, a familiar breakfast, probably maybe a snack mid-morning, like a piece of fruit or something, and if you've got if it's a 3 o'clock kickoff, an early lunch, 11:30, 12 o'clock, just a standard kind of thing, lowish fat, lowish fiber, bit of protein, chicken, some rice, something like that.
Okay, third question. Why 101?
Just because it had a bit of a flow to it. I thought 101, it seems like a good number. That's all. It was quite hard actually to get the 101. That was actually harder than writing the actual chapters.
Did you have the name for it first?
Yeah, I had the name first. Yeah, and then I had to choose 101 things. And as you went through it, the list evolved. I'm like, oh, that's too similar, or something new came up, or came across some research that I'd never come across before, and I thought, right, we'll get that in, and yeah, that's why.
Anybody else got any questions?
You talk about the misconceptions that are in the industry. What do you think can be done about it to eradicate them?
Well, there's some talk at the moment about influencers. You're not allowed. Well, there's a petition's going around to stop people on social media posting about detox or slimming products if they're getting paid for it, which is probably a pretty good idea. Again, more regulation on what can go out. So, like the other day, somebody's posted about slimming lollipops, and it was mental. And the biggest contradiction was this person was a body positive influencer and was talking about having slimming lollipops, which got huge amount of backlash from our own following for that reason, and from anyone else who's like, well, why are you having a slimming lollipop? This is nonsense. So yeah, I think there just needs to be tighter regulation on what influencers can, when I say influencers, what washed up Geordie Shore Z-list celebs can post about. And And Katie Price did this the other day as
Yeah.
well, when she's like, oh, thanks to Boomboard, I've lost a heap of weight. And our followers were like, yeah, well done for breathing in. Because the photo was just like the standard photo and then a photo.
Sucked in tight.
And it's just lies. It's
Horrible.
like, it's flat out lying. And I think, yeah, that needs wiped out.
Just stop giving them blue ticks.
Okay, stop giving them blue ticks. Yeah, exactly.
Don't let them have an account. We got any other questions?
How nutritious is frozen fruit and veg, and is no frozen fruit and veg better than none at some at all?
Yeah, frozen fruit and veg often can be more nutritious than the fresh fruit and veg because fresh, generally speaking again, frozen fruits and veg are often picked closer to ripening and then instantly flash frozen, so the nutrients are locked in. Whereas if we're getting strawberries from New Zealand, for example, then it's picked when it's green and it ripens on the plane, and it just takes way longer from us from going from farm to table. So the shorter this farm to table window is, generally it's going to be more nutritious. So yeah, frozen fruits and veg are an absolute winner, especially as well we think about food waste. That's something I spoke about this on the podcast not that long ago, and it was a real eye-opener about the amount of food waste we could have, and I've really tried to cut down on that. And frozen fruits and veg for people who are maybe living alone, that is also a big one, so you don't have to think, oh, I'm always buying this and it goes out of date. So yeah, it's not only is it not bad for you, it's maybe a good idea.
My favourite's frozen cherries.
Right.
Oh, so good. Any other questions? Oh, got two. Donna.
All your cookbooks and live off your meals during the week. Are you planning to come out with another one?
Yes. So this is very hush hush at the moment.
Insiders.
But we're maybe in discussions with publishers about doing a printed recipe book. Maybe. That's all I can say.
Carol.
Yeah, just following on from Donna's actually. The high protein handbooks, what's your favourite or your top 3 favourite recipes from those?
Right. Top 3 favourite recipes from them. Probably the smoky beef and bacon chili for the slow cooker recipe book would be one. Brazilian coconut chicken curry from book 2, which I made the other day, haven't made in ages, and I always forget how much I like it. And Mexican lasagna. Yeah, they'd probably be my favourites. What about you?
Mexican lasagna, because Chris knows that's my staple at work. I just eat it all week.
Yeah. I can't make Mexican lasagna at the moment because my wife's pregnant and tomato-based foods put her off, so I'm really restricted on what I can have. No bolognese.
The butter chicken's mine, that's...
Oh no, I can't have spicy foods.
Oh.
Can't eat them. It's a nightmare.
Scott, where did you get all your inspiration from for all the recipes?
Cookery programs, or when I go out for dinner. I'll sometimes as well. I'll just go in random restaurants and look at their online and look at what their menu is and be like, oh, that's quite a good idea. I normally just tweak stuff. Like somebody will make it and they'll be like, oh, all this cream and all this olive oil, and you just take a few things out. And sometimes as well, I don't know if you guys get annoyed by this, but when you're watching a cookery program and they're like, oh, pop down to your local Croatian food shop or something, you're like, well, how am I getting that? And it's a nightmare. You can't get any of the ingredients here. So yeah, and I try and find out, right, what is it there, what's it similar to, and make it so it's a bit more accessible.
Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, got two. Right, Barbara.
Any plans to do a family-friendly high protein handbook?
Wow,
It does now.
I'd contend that they are family friendly at the moment. In terms of doing one for children, no, because childhood nutrition isn't an area of my expertise. So I'd probably, at the moment, I don't think it's something I would do. Same with vegetarian high protein handbook. I get asked this all the time, are you doing one? And I would love to do it, but my vegetarian cooking is terrible. It's really, I'm just not that good at it. I can't cook interesting vegetarian foods. So I think, yeah, I've just said that I can't do that.
Tough.
Yeah, tough, sorry. Or
Yeah.
just refer it to somebody else. Like, there's
Yeah.
loads of other good books that do this. Go get it.
Vegetarian cookbooks.
Vegetarian cookbooks, yeah.
Megan?
If there was one country in the world that you would go to and maybe spend a month exploring their local foods and learn a lot of kind of cuisines locally, which country in the world would it be that you'd be
India.
going for? India.
Yeah, India, definitely. I love, my two favourite types of food to cook are Turkish food, because I think it's so varied, because you've got the Mediterranean influence, and you've got the North African stuff creeping in, and you've got the Asian influence, because originally it was on the Silk Road, so the food in Turkey is amazing. I think it's hugely underrated. India, I think, it's so varied. Like, for example, in India, they don't really call food a curry. It's a British term. Curry is a gravy. It's like a sauce, which is an example of how much we badly mutate food over here. So yeah, I'd love to sort of go around India and do some proper exploring, and I'd have to take plenty of probiotics though, because my stomach can't hold out.
In a few years, when your baby's a toddler, would you go and do it? Do you think?
I think India is on my list of once like kids have flown the nest, so that's quite far down the line. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to go though. Has anybody been to India? You good?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Hugely.
Yeah. See.
Any other questions? Anybody got any burning questions? No?
There's no such thing as a stupid one, by the way. Just ask it. I'm not going to mock you or laugh.
No, but Chase will.
Not here. Not on camera. No.
So what about this craze about sort of gluten-free, dairy-free diets?
The only time you want to cut a food out of your diet is if it makes you feel ill, if you can't afford it, or you don't like the taste of it. There is no sound rationale for just saying, I am not going to eat bread. I'm not going to drink milk. There's no reason for you actually doing it. There aren't any health benefits unless the food makes you feel ill. So gluten intolerance affects roughly 0.5% of the population. So cutting it out doesn't make sense. And this isn't me bashing people are like, oh, why, this is not, my wife can't have gluten. So most of my stuff anyway, I'm cooking in the house, is gluten-free anyway. Veganism, excluding the ethical discussion behind it and why someone might go vegan or vegetarian for ethical reasons, from a purely health perspective, again, if you look at the research, it doesn't appear to be any healthier compared to other forms of eating, assuming it's balanced. But the reason why, no, hang on, that's not true. The veganism and vegetarian diets, people feel better and they are improved health markers, but it's because they're eating more fruits and vegetables as opposed to them eating less animal-derived products. So when the studies are showing that it's comparing this and it's coming out on top, it's generally because the fruit and veg intake increases. And often that's when people say they do feel a lot better by cutting back on their meat intake, is because they're eating more fruits and vegetables in place of what they're eating. And then you have the whole environmental discussion about whether you should be including meat in your diet. And it seems to be that we should be eating less meat from a whole range of perspectives, environmental, possible health things with regards to red meat. It's, again, data still coming out, still not had direct cause and effect of red meat equals this. But certainly eating more plants is a good idea for most people. But I know I've kind of totally tangent on you, but no, you wouldn't need to cut anything out unless there's a good reason for doing it. But cutting out is different from eating less. There's certainly good arguments for eating less of certain foods, but cutting it out completely, yeah, probably not a good idea.
Anybody else? Any good questions? Yeah.
See, in terms of the meat, like I try and eat chicken or fish maybe about 4 or 5 times a week and keep red meat 2 days. I've
must have heard that somewhere along the lines. What would be your recommendations
Probably that.
for that?
Probably that.
Yeah.
Um,
Is red meat harder to digest? Is that right?
No, red meat, there seems to be there's more research coming out showing that people who eat more red meat seem to have lower quality of lower health markers. So people who are eating more red meat seem to be, things like life expectancy is reduced, or their weight is higher, but it's not direct cause and effect, meaning it's not saying people who eat red meat definitely have this, this, and this. It's trend. It's called association data. So this equals this, but we don't know if one's causing the other. But it seems to suggest that if we reduce our red meat intake, you see these positive markers increase. So based on that, you think, well, it's probably no harm. And again, especially environmentally, then yeah, it's probably a good idea to eat less red meat as well, and just generally just less meat. Which is hard to do, and I try and do it, but I really struggle, and I find that's when we start. If I'm trying to have a meal without any meat in it, I usually go down the Indian route and do something there, because huge parts of India don't eat. Yeah, it's plant-based diets. There's lots of really good. I don't like using the word, but lots of really good curries, and so on there. So that is something to think about. But yeah, what you're doing is probably a good idea.
So what kind of steak's the best then?
Whatever kind you like.
Anybody else got any questions? Starting to wind down. Okay then. Yeah. Scott, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Thank you. Take these mics off now.
Mike.